everyone to episode 2 of Control Alt Access. I'm one of your hosts, Laura, and I'm here as ever with the other host of this show, Arevya. Say hi.
Hello, hi everyone.
How are you doing this week, Arevya?
I am stressed, but that is okay. Sometimes you just have a lot to do. How are you
I
doing?
I'm similar. I am in the midst of trying to get everything organized for the Accessibility Summer Showcase that's coming up in like 3 weeks, and that's way sooner than it feels like it should be,
Yeah.
and therefore I am in chaos right now.
Yeah, chaos mode, yeah. Shall we start a bit with like talking about what we played this week? Because I've done something really cool this week.
Tell me about what you've been up to this week.
I have been playing Stardew Valley again. No, that is what I've been done a lot. But other than that, I tried Little Kitty Big City on stream.
I also tried Little Kitty Big City on stream.
It's so cute. Oh
It's so
my
charming.
God. Oh my God. I did review the demo when it came out last year with the Wholesome Games summer case or showcase. And I one of the things I talked about in the review was just like, hello, you have everything in a speech bubble, so you can just make the speech bubble bigger. I don't care if it like goes shadows over things, because like I would rather read the text and then to see
Yes.
what is happening, because the text is what is important, because they're just standing there anyway. And then I open the game and they have the possibility to make the bubbles really, really big. They can
Yes,
like literally take up your
their
whole screen.
largest text size is so large, and I'm always happy. The advice I always give to people about text size options in games when I do consulting stuff is go for like whatever size you think is too large, that's almost big enough. Go a little bigger.
Yes. Go big or go home, 100%. And I was really, really happy to play that game. There was some things I was just like, I wish we would have. But all in all, indie games, I love indie games. And like, it's an indie game with a cat. Oh,
I love this game. I
yes.
played like maybe an hour and a half yesterday just because I knew we were gonna be doing this recording today, and that cat is so expressive.
Yes.
It's very squash and stretch, slightly exaggerated expressioning on that cat that is very easy to read the emoting on, that I
Yeah.
appreciate. For anyone who's not seen it, we'll have footage up on screen if you're watching the video version, but you play this little black cat that has fallen out a window and you're trying to get home to your apartment several floors up. And sure, it's a game about trying to make your way home, but it's also a game about just doing little mischief.
Yes.
And I love a good game about just doing little
Yes.
mischief.
Like the first thing you have to do when you come into the game is to like whack down some plants, like pots of plants that are standing on like a fence, and you have to whack them down. And I was just like, oh, this is peak cat core.
It reminded me in some ways of something like Untitled Goose Game, but with a slightly
Yes.
different energy. Because
Yes.
Untitled Goose Game is like angry mischief.
Yes.
It's vengeful mischief. This is, I couldn't be mad at you mischief.
Yeah.
It's
Oh.
you can't hate me, I'm adorable.
And you have small hats, like, oh my
Yes.
God, oh my God, it's so cute. I'm going to continue streaming it. I'm going to 100% it, I think, because I'm just having so much fun.
It's one of those games I played a little bit of on stream. I'm probably not going to finish it on stream, but that's because I want it to be my cozy not for work game now.
Yeah, I can understand that. I also played Botany Manor. I'm not going to talk that much about it, other than, holy hell, that was like a box of chill and comfort and blood pressure medicine. It's just I'm working on a review for it to YouTube. So but like, just seeing an indie game, a cozy indie game, caring so much about accessibility is just so nice to see that they have really done more than what I'm going to say needed, but like, they,
It feels like they've gone above and beyond.
yes, there we go. They feel like they've gone beyond, yeah, and it just feels good. When I played it, I was just like, I just got lost in the game in a good way, in a way of like, I don't want this to end, and I'm a bit like sitting here right now going like, I'm writing the review and going like, I just want to go back in, and I wish
Yeah.
like, it is one of those games I'm just like, can we get a DLC, please.
It really has a charming sense of scale to it. I love a lot of the stuff. Like I've talked about this in my accessibility review. I really love that the motion sickness menu has the little descriptions for, hey, do you not know what an FOV slider is, but you know you get motion sick? This is the direction to move that slider in to be
Yes.
helpful.
Yes.
I love the narrative, the storyline that runs through of this late 1800s academic trying to be taken seriously at a time where women were not really taken seriously in academia.
Yep.
It all comes together to make this really quite special thing.
Yep. It's just really, really good, and yeah, not selfless, really selfish. Self promote. If you want to see the the review, it will be up on my YouTube in like 2 weeks.
Hey.
Other than that, I did something really cool. I ended up on a debate last week. So there is a film here in Norway. I don't know if I talked about it last time. Forgive me if I did. But it's a film called Ibelin. It's about a boy, or a man in the end, named Mats, who grew up with illness that he knew he was going to die of. And his like sort of way to cope with this was to play World of Warcraft. And he when he died, his family thought that, oh, there is no one, like he didn't have like a good life. And then people started sending his parents a lot of mail with thanking them for like, and condolences and stuff like that. And it was really, really heartwarming. And it turns out that he had like this really, really big online world where he did a lot of awesome things, had a lot of awesome friends. And to honor that, Blizzard have actually put up a grave stone, so you can go and see the Evelyn gravestone. And this, of course, has sparked. This is a Norwegian film, and because he was Norwegian, it sparked a lot of debates around like, is gaming good or not? Again, of course, that is the typical one, but also like, what is gaming? What does gaming mean for people? So I was asked to come and do a debate about that, talking about what is actually freedom when you live in a life with limitation. And it was really, really nice. I think the audience thought they were coming to go and see somebody we were going to be really against each other, but then we were like 98% of everything we talked about, we were just like, yes.
I mean, the word debate, it sort of feels like it has an implication that someone's going to be arguing, no, video games are evil, and that, you know, that person shouldn't have it felt like their life meant something.
Yeah.
It's good to hear it wasn't that confrontational.
No, it wasn't. It was more like because the opponent talked about like, if like, it's really important that things like this doesn't end up being a reason for people working with disabled kids to just say, well, you have an internet, go in and sit in front of your computer and game. And I agreed with that. I was just like, of course. Yeah. But then his stance were a bit like, we should sort of like maybe make sure that this isn't a way for disabled people to run away from the real life. And my stance on that was more like, we as disabled people are like allowed to do non-good things as well, like take non-good choices for ourselves. Like the freedom we give non-disabled people, we also need to give us. And and it was a really, really good debate. If you are in Norway and Norwegian or understand Norwegian, you can listen to the debate on Litteraturhuset. I can put a link down in the comments if you want to listen to it. It was a really fun debate. So yeah. And also I did something called a brain camp. It's really, really cool. I was asked to go up to my local hospital. They have like a section of the local hospital which is for kids and youth, but it's not like hospital. It's more like they have swimming pool and a gym and like a VR room and a gaming room and stuff like that. And I came up there to showcase kids who has brain damage about like gaming, that they can still game, and they got to test gaming in a safe environment. A lot of them have experience because they got brain damage or brain illness when they have gotten older. They have experience having seizures and stuff, and it's like a way for them to test out going on a computer again in safe environment learning about their body, and it was really, really fun. It was so much fun.
Yay!
Like, I have cerebral palsy, that is a brain damage I'm born with, and just seeing these things exist, I wish this was like, when I left there, I was so happy, and then I started crying when I was on the bus stop, because I
Oh,
was just like, I wish I had this opportunity, and now I'm nearly crying again, because like, I grew up feeling so isolated and alienated from the world, because I didn't understand, I didn't know I had a brain damage, so I didn't understand why I couldn't function. And here you
mm.
have kids coming for a whole like 5 days just learning about the world. They did everything. They went shopping, they went like on hiking, they played basketball with a national basketball team. They did everything,
Oh.
but they were supposed to learn how to feel their body and to themselves say no is enough, but then also understand they can push themselves. I'm so happy.
That is so lovely. As I think any disabled person can empathize with that feeling of not being given space to go, what can I do? And
Yes.
what is it okay to establish limits and to go, just because I am establishing boundaries for myself, does that mean that I won't get to do things I want to do still?
Yeah.
And it's so lovely to hear that there is space being made for that, for kids to understand their own boundaries, but to also see that they can go beyond limitations
Yeah.
regardless. That's so lovely.
Yeah, and they deserve it. Like, that is what school for many people are, a way where they can try and push boundaries and like test the waters. But for disabled kids, school is a lot about just trying to quote unquote act normal, is the only way I can
Yeah.
say it. School isn't made for people who are disabled in a lot of cases. So
Yeah.
here they have a way where they can actually just focus on this, and then they can come back into society. And like, the foundation or the place they wars like idea is that society sadly isn't accessible for us, and that is just a reality. We have to work towards getting it more accessible, but it's not, period.
Yeah.
So we need to learn to deal with the society as it is today, and I really, really enjoy
Couldn't agree
that.
more.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so sweet. You've got me welling up a little here
Yeah,
talking about
cute. But
it.
Laura, what have you played this week?
I've been dipping my toes into a bunch of things this week.
Yep.
Where should I start? I played the opening hour of a game called Pine Hearts, which I've been excited to talk about.
Yay.
Hopefully by the time next episode of this happens, I can do a full review and talk about the full game. But right now, I can do a preview of the first hour. I will give a little caveat up front. This is one of the games that was part of the Accessibility Summer Showcase back in 2023. So while I was not paid in any way to promote that game last year, I just highlighted it because I thought it looked cool accessibility wise. There's your caveat if you need to know.
Yeah.
But Pine Hearts is a game where you play as this little tiny person who looks like a bean with clothes on. Um, and the gist of it, as I understand it, is that you are going to climb a. It reminded me a lot of Celeste, in that you are going to go climb a mountain because of something emotionally significant to you. I think the gist is you maybe climbed this mountain with your dad as a child, and I feel like the dad
Oh.
isn't around anymore, and this is a. I want to feel close to a parent who's not here anymore. So you're going to go climb this big mountain. And it is a sort of top down, puzzly exploration game. Not too challenging puzzles, it's all pretty simple. Where you run around collecting items, talking to little people, and going on this quest that will eventually lead you up this big mountain. Accessibility stuff. There's a bunch of really cool settings in there. They have in most games you would call it high contrast mode. Here they call it color blocking, but it is that sort of desaturate the background, put all of the interactable things in big bright colors. There's a lot of stuff in here that's for motor accessibility. I like that they have on first boot up of the game like a little accessibility setup that's just like 2 or 3 choices, and it's like, do you want more complicated or easier in this regard? And it like
Oh,
shows
that's
you
cool.
pictures and explains what they do.
Oh, that's I
uh
like. Okay,
yeah so
pictures and explain. Chef kiss.
yeah so it's and that carries through to a lot of the stuff in the game. While there is some text for things like what a quest objective is, um a lot of the how you do a thing is shown with symbols. So like if you're doing
Oh.
the mode where you have to like do interactions to say break a rock, it'll be like here's a flashing A button, and when you press it, here's an analog stick going down. So you push the analog stick down and it does the thing.
Smart.
But if you want to play it on simplified, it's just one button press and it'll break the thing or chop the tree down, and you don't have to do like other inputs as well to make those things
That's so
happen.
cool. I like
Yeah,
that.
there's a lot of really nice, thoughtful design in it. It is a very simple game, at least in its first hour. The most complicated thing I did in that first hour was I had to help a man make a burger, so he would give me, I think, an axe. So I had to run around following his instructions of like, I think the cheese, I might have left it with the fisherman so he could use it as bait. He had to go find the fisherman and get the cheese back. And then you had to stack ingredients in a burger on a grill in a certain order. And like maybe one of the ingredients doesn't show you the cheese, but it shows you a mouse and an arrow, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's probably the cheese goes there in the burger.
Yeah.
None of it is particularly complicated, but it all is very charming in its presentation.
Yeah, that's good.
Like, I'm not a person that like needs a game to be complicated necessarily. We talked about Little Kitty Big City before.
Yeah.
It's similar vibes of I'm just enjoying being in the space.
Yeah.
Even if I'm just sort of exploring a little aimlessly sometimes. I'm excited to play more of it and to see where it builds up to, but that first hour, simple, lightweight, nice and accessible, charming little adventure that I am excited to see more of. What else? We talked on episode 1 about a game that was published by EA, Tales of Kenzera Zao.
Yes.
Which had that accessibility portal. I have gone and played the first hour or so of that. First maybe hour and a half.
I was into your stream yesterday and I was like watching a bit and go like, this is cool.
Yeah, so I will say there is really cool stuff happening accessibility wise, and I appreciate that a lot of the options that are there are being offered. I think that accessibility wise it is fairly approachable. It's certainly not gonna stand one-to-one with something like Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown that came out earlier this year that was like that gold standard that I'm now gonna have to fight to not compare every game in the genre to. I love a lot of this game's visual appeal. Having played it now, this game has a wonderful understanding of doing background visuals where like one big landmark really sets the tone for a location. The first scene of that game is over a futuristic city, and there's one building that's a pyramid with an upside down pyramid on top of it. And like it's such a striking landmark that it makes that city feel like very memorable. And this game is very good at those kinds of memorable set piece design moments. The game has sort of side-scrolling combat, and the combat encounters I found really enjoyable. There's a mechanic for switching between masks to switch combat styles, and that felt really satisfying. I have one quibble with the game so far, and this is me, and this is a little bit my fault. There are optional challenge missions in this game, and they're clearly labeled as optional, and I could just walk away. I don't think they're terribly well balanced. Because like the very first one that's offered to you is, here is a very fast moving river where you have to slide under things and jump over things, and it's all one hit kill spikes, and there's no checkpointing, and it's the very first optional challenge is one hit kill, one hit kill, one hit kill, one hit kill, dodge, 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 dodge. Straight away, it feels like a thing that any other game would make like very late game optional challenge.
Yeah.
And I know I could just walk away, but I'm a completionist. I have the little completionism thing in my head, and I start getting like, I can do this. I can't walk away about it a little.
Yeah.
It's not that it is bad, and I'm glad that difficulty is in an optional section. It does feel like that's a little higher than the start of optional difficulty should maybe be.
Yeah, I can see that. I saw something really cool. I came over a TikTok about the game, and somebody showing or talking about their happiness about having
Mm,
a game coming out from EA, a really big publisher and like studio,
mm.
and how it's a game not set in Europe. It's not Europe
Yes.
centric, and I thought that was really really cool. I thought that was it shows how important representation is, or seeing familiarities if it's not representation. And I think it's cool trying new things, so which is actually one of the reasons why I've gotten curious the more I read about it, with also the accessibility portal we talked about last week. I think it's cool to see somebody trying something new, just like that. They
Yeah.
just they're trying something new, and like it's the ye old tale of like it might not be made for you, but then I just get more curious about it. So I think it's cool. I think I'm going to take time when I have some time this summer. I This is on my list of things I want to check out and look out, see if I can
Yeah.
learn some things.
Yeah, it made me think while playing it of Disney Plus has been running some animated shows recently that have given me that same feel of I'm glad big corporation is putting some money into telling some stories that aren't just as overwhelmingly white as a
Yep.
lot of their output tends to be. Um, I can't remember the name of the first one I wanted to talk about. There was a compilation series of different shorts set in various parts of Africa. But actually, Laura from the future here, I do remember what it's called. It's called Kizazi Moto Generation Fire. I really recommend checking it out. It is a really good eclectic anthology of different animation. There's one in particular that is street racing against aliens using mechs, and it reminds me so much of work by like Studio Trigger, for example. Like really, really top-notch animation. That's the one I was trying to remember the name of here. But recently they've published one called Iwaju. I apologize if I've mispronounced it at all. That was set in Lagos. About a little girl whose father was trying to invent a robot lizard self-defense system to keep the little girl safe. Adorable series. But in that same way, it's really nice seeing big publishers put some money behind like telling
Yeah.
stories that are not just the same stories that usually
Yeah.
fund being out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot narrative wise that I really enjoyed about Tales of Kenzera Zao so far. I'm gonna stick with it. I really like its approach to death and grief and mourning as narrative themes. Yeah, the only other thing I played this week that like I'm gonna have a spoilery video up the day after this goes up on YouTube. I played more Hades 2 because that's in early access now. It was just having its technical test last time we talked about it. Generally, my opinions haven't changed accessibility wise on how I talk about Hades 2. And I'm going to talk a little bit slightly spoilery here. If you don't want to hear anything at all spoilery about Hades 2, we have timestamps in the description so you can skip ahead past this. So I'm talking for a second so you have time to pause and skip ahead if you don't. If you want to dodge this, it won't be long, it won't be in big detail, but I've done my preamble. Hades 2 has an accessibility problem that really frustrates me. And
Oh.
yeah, so the short version is one of the bosses you're trying to work towards fighting is Kronos, who is a titan of time itself. His whole thing is time. And the developers thought it would be cool to stop you being allowed to pause during your boss fight with him, because only he controls the flow of time, not you.
Oh.
And not only does this mean, as someone that has like really inconsistent hands, I can't just like pause to have a second and continue the fight as I can in any other boss fight in that game, but also you can't go to the options menu, which means you can't access accessibility options during that fight, such as turning on God mode. You can't go to the accessibility settings menu during that fight. And that's not great.
Can that be an oversight?
No, it's very deliberate.
Oh
It's
no.
very deliberate. The menu starts to come up, and then the character Kronos goes, "Only I control the flow of time," and closes the menu.
Oh. Oh,
It's yeah,
yeah.
and the game has a way to make it so you can pause during his fight, You have to beat him 3 times without being allowed to pause in order to unlock the ability to pause in his fight and
Oh.
access things like the accessibility menu. And I think, like, either they could have offered an accessibility setting that's like, just let me pause at any time, or made the quest that lets you get your pausing access back into something that didn't need beating him to unlock the ability to pause. Like,
Yeah,
there are ways you could work around it, but it's
yeah.
frustrating.
Or they could have like just say a small little, if you need accessibility options, you can press this button now. In
Yeah,
this fight,
like,
you can press this button.
I feel like there are ways they could work around it, and I've got a video coming up the day after this podcast goes up about it, but yeah, for a game that I otherwise think is doing a lot of good accessibility wise in the genre, it's a little point of frustration.
Yeah, of course.
Um
It's just part of how it
yeah.
is. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's most of what I've been playing. The only other thing I've been playing is there's some new DLC out for Vampire Survivors, which there is a Contra themed DLC called Operation Guns, and I continue to really enjoy Vampire Survivors as a game that I can just play one-handed with a single analog stick and one button. And this new Contra DLC has put a lot of very cool music into that game that I'm enjoying a lot.
Cool. That's really, really cool.
Yeah, so I think that's everything we've played and done since last episode we wanted to talk about. Shall we go to the news?
Let's do that. On this week's news roundup, Pine Heart's release date has been announced. Xbox is closing studios, including Hi-Fi Rush developer. Accessibility NYC detail announced. Cryptmaster demo released. Bang Avenger Football gets colorblind mode. Abiotic Factory gets a misphonia setting. Warner Brothers Games is hiring an accessibility job role working on Wonder Woman. And Fishbowl demo release.
Wonderful. So some of these we can just like rattle through pretty quick this week, I think.
Yeah.
Let's start with Pine Hearts. We
Yep.
mentioned before, that game seems pretty charming from its first hour. Coming out on May 23rd on, I believe, PC and Nintendo Switch. I don't think it's been announced for any other platforms currently.
Nope, I'm looking forward to that one. I think it will be fun. It sounded fun what you did. I need something to cool down in the evening, so I think I will take a look for it. Use that.
Yeah, it's coming out right between episodes of this show, so by the time that we next record, I suspect we will have both played probably more than an hour of it, I would guess.
Yeah.
Also, can I just say that's the first game that we've received review codes as a podcast
Yes.
for. We got, like, our podcast email got sent 2 codes for the game. I was like, yeah, you recognize both of us being here.
It's really cool. I would never thought like after the first episode, people actually started reaching out, which
Yeah.
is really cool. And what we want people to do, if you sit on a game you want somebody to talk about, let us know. That is why we have
Yeah.
this podcast. It's a way
Well,
for getting all the news.
yeah, we'll get there later, but we've had like several conversations with developers that came out of that first episode, including one that we've got a giveaway later to do
Yes.
that came from our first episode. So it's really nice to know people are listening and are paying attention to this show being here. So hooray!
Yeah, hooray! But the sad news, the absolutely really, really
Mm.
sad news of this 2 weeks is that Xbox is closing 2 studios. And that is their Tango studio, which is behind Hi-Fi Rush, and Arcane Austin, which is behind Prey, Dishonest, and Redfall.
Yeah, so obviously the industry has been having closures left, right, and center recently,
Yeah.
and that always sucks. The industry did a lot of expanding and growth during COVID, and then people started going outside again, and the industry started to shrink, and executives just started closing entire studios to,
Yeah.
not caring about the human impact of that. And any of these studio closures sucks, but Tango Gameworks in particular has, like, I think really been felt in the accessibility space there,
Yeah.
going awake.
Yeah, if people don't know about Hi-Fi Rush and are into accessibility, I will highly recommend you checking out the game and with the work it's done, it did a new thing about like it's a music driven game and story based platformer music driven, but it also was so accessible for people that were hard of hearing and deaf, which I think
Yeah,
it was a unique in a way of how it looked at accessibility, and a lot of good people worked on the accessibility of this game, and it was really obvious that accessibility was part of the whole process, and
mm,
it was just a charm.
yeah. It's for anyone who's not played it. It's a sort of character action game, where you don't have to do your attacks on the beat of the music, but you get bonuses for doing so,
That was
and
one, yeah.
the whole world sort of like moves in rhythm with the soundtrack. Like you've got clear visualizers, like there's a little robot cat that will sort of pulse lights, but like signposts in the background will be like sort of bouncing in rhythm, and there's so many things to give you a visual way of telling what the music's doing.
Yeah.
Um, and on top of that, like not only was that really unique, but also, as many people have pointed out, this was a Japanese game development studio that had for the first time like really pushed themselves forward on accessibility in ways that like doing things that other studios weren't doing in a country where being forward thinking on accessibility is not as common. And it's really disappointing to see this very forward thinking studio not get a chance to keep doing that kind of work that was really applaudable at the time.
Yeah, and we talked a bit before we started the podcast about like things aren't as easy this year. It's a tough year for everyone, but if you have lost your job or you're in a project and you are a bit scared and a bit like flustered and don't know what to do, we see you. I think this is horrible. I think it's really sad to see. I see every single day new people asking, hey, can somebody recommend me a job, or that they struggle getting into things. So I just hope that in some months or a year, we can say the opposite thing, that we can start shouting out when people have job openings and we will see an
Yeah.
upwards. But yeah, we see you all, and I'm so sorry to see these two studios closing down.
It's a real shame. It considering how much money Xbox has just spent on acquiring Activision Blizzard King, it is really disappointing to see them like buying studios at the same time as they're like closing entire very good teams.
Yeah.
Next up on the list, we've got Accessibility NYC,
Yeah,
or
or it's
A11Y and then
yeah,
NYC.
or is it Ali, New York City, LA?
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know, but I
So,
found this
yeah.
when I was scrolling around. So I have like a Google alert for accessibility
Mm,
news, and this one came
yep,
up.
same.
Yeah, and this one came up, and I thought it was really, really cool that there is a convention that are going to talk about accessibility, and one of the people there, I think his name is pronounced Vishnu.
Yep.
Yeah, Vishnu will be sharing insights on designing, building, and testing video game accessibility to tools for blind, low vision players to engage with 3D worlds. And it's on June the 4th, and it's viewable online. And the presentation will have human captions and not automatic captions.
Yep. Much like stuff like GAconf that we talked about recently, it's really nice seeing stuff like this be like, hey, you can attend in person,
Yep.
but if you need to attend remotely, this accessibility information is still going to be widely available to you. And I will definitely be checking in on this talk because we are entering an era where video game accessibility making pushes for blind and low vision players to be able to more widely access like open 3D worlds is a really big thing, and I'm always interested in like more research on that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, we will post the links in the description so you can go and check it out yourself if you want to.
Yeah. We got one more story on here that I'm excited to talk about because I have like a vague connection to it, and I'm just excited to tell people to check this thing out. There's a game called Fishbowl that has a demo available now. Or it's up as part of Ludonarracon, which I don't know whether the demo. I assume the demo will still be up by the time you see this, but if it's not, my apologies. But there's a demo for a game called Fishbowl, It's made by a two-person indie dev team from India, and it is a game about trying to make a living editing YouTube videos after just having moved away from home for the first time as a young adult.
Oh, that one hits.
Um, right, right. It is a really charming game that I wanted to bring. I'll acknowledge why I'm bringing this up. I did some consulting work on this, and I'm very excited about this game because I saw this demo a few months ago, and the demo is really fun and really cute. So this dev team has been asking all the right questions about accessibility. It's rare that I've done consulting for a game, and the devs have like been so on the ball about the right kind of questions to be asking, and I'm like, yes, cool, people should check this game out. They're doing good stuff. This is a game that was almost in the 2023 Accessibility Summer Showcase. We got in touch with each other just slightly too close to the showcase, and there wasn't time to put a trailer together, but go check out the demo for Fishbowl. And it's not in this demo, but next time there's a demo, you might see my name in the as one of like only 3 people in the credits, which is cool. But yeah, Fishbowl's charming. Go check it out if you can.
And we have some more news, and this next news has been really, really nice of Ian Hamilton, who has sent them to us. Thank you so much for the help getting out some new news. So thank you so much for that. So the next news will be from Ian, and the first one is that Cryptomaster is getting an update, an accessibility update.
Yeah, so Cryptmaster is a black and white first-person dungeon exploration combat game. It's got a demo that's available at the moment as part of Ludonarracon again. I played a bit of the demo of this last night. It's sort of like Typing of the Dead, if you've ever played that.
Yeah. Fun.
It is a spooky game where you're like typing words in to do attacks, open chests, and do spells and things. And sometimes, like, you know, maybe you've got a spell that's like cut and it'll cut through a rope or something, but maybe you're up against an enemy where it's like you'll take damage if you use the letter T. So you're trying to find another word to do a spell to cut that rope that doesn't have the letter T in it. And it is a neat game, but it's a game that's mostly about typing.
Yeah, which is scary for people like me who has dyslexia.
Well, that's good because they have a way around that in their accessibility stuff, thanks to it getting an update. So accessibility stuff in there. Subtitles, predictive text. If you are bad at spelling, it'll sort of go. This is what you're trying to type, right? Hints and tooltips. But the most interesting one is voice input.
Yay!
So for a game that's about like forming words and typing things, you can just use text to speech to say the words that you want to type. And that's
so
really
cool.
nice.
Yes, I love that. As somebody who like and this is growing up with things like dyslexia or problem with spelling words, there is sort of like this stigma around it. I got a lot of bullied or not being able to. Still, people make to this day. I'm 32 years old, and still people laugh about me when I make mistakes of words. So it is a sore thing because, so like I see games like this, and I'm just like, that sounds like fun because I played these games when I was younger, but there is a barrier for me to entering because of the bullying, and then having the possibility to voice is so awesome because then what will most likely happen in my life is that I will start with that, but then after some time I will feel comfortable with trying to do typing, which is just good.
Yeah, and as someone who's in the same situation as you know, I did a video with Jeffrey Bunting where I misspelled the word migraine in the thumbnail for the image because I'm bad at spelling things.
Yeah.
I really appreciate stuff like this, and there's one other setting in there that I really like, which is that you can do there's a real time but also a turn-based option.
Yep.
And turn-based is great because it means if I'm not certain I know how to spell a word, I can just pull my phone up and type it and go, and Google will go, "Did you mean this?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, sure, that's what I meant. I'll type that in the game." Taking the time pressure out means I can go check how to spell a thing if I need to, and that helps a lot.
Yeah. It's really, really cool when they give us these things, and I don't, well, maybe the developers have thought about it, but if not, I hope that they just know that they will open up a whole new world for not just like accessibility in the form of disability barriers, but also just for comfort in the form of people who have sort of bad vibes around being make fun of not being able to spell things now
Yeah.
can enter on a comfortable level for them. So this is really, really cool.
Exactly. The next one we've got is Bang Average Football, which is a top-down pixel art football game for 1 to 4 players. And for Americans, when I say football, I mean soccer, I guess. I got to specify that. Um, but this is a game that, until recently, was not very accessible to colorblind players at all. And the dev has put in colorblind filters so that the game is now playable by people with the most common categories of colorblindness. And that's really cool. Hooray for recognizing an accessibility flaw in your game and patching it to make it more accessible.
Yes, I think this is really important. I like when games does that. We always say that to make a game as accessible as can be, it needs to be part of the start of your game. But
Mm.
if you haven't done that, that does not mean that the ship is sailed. There is a lot of things you can patch in. It will necessarily not be perfect, but there is still a lot of things you can do and open up for a lot of new players. So go go bang average football.
The best time to put accessibility settings in your game is launch day. The next best time is right now.
Yes, 100%.
So next we have Abiotic Factor, which is a game that's in early access at the moment. It is a survival crafting game set in a research facility where supernatural stuff is going wrong. I played a little bit of this back at Gamescom in 2023 and talked to the devs about accessibility stuff. It's cool to see that they're continuing to push ahead on accessibility stuff in that regard. The game already had some cool accessibility things like arachnophobia mode and things in place, but the new update is they've added a misophonia mode, and
Yay.
not enough games have misophonia support.
No, and if anybody wonders what misophonia is that you get uncomfortable feeling or yeah, around the sound of like chewing, eating, drinking, all of that
It's
jazz.
yeah, there's a lot of sounds that can trigger it, and it's very specifically it tends to set off anger and disgust as
Yeah,
feelings. It's not just I don't like that sound.
no,
It's very specifically like certain sounds there it's basically like there's a bit of a cross wiring between the sound and one of your emotional
yeah,
states, and it triggers like very uncontrollable strong
yeah,
emotions that you can't really do anything about. You hear a sound and your brain just goes, I'm angry now. Anger alarms going off.
yeah,
And it's a hard thing to live with. Like my mum has misophonia and didn't know there was a word for it for a long time when I was growing up, and it's been one of the few things that we've been sort of able to bond over in terms of like going, oh yeah, no, we both have sensory things around senses. Yours has a different label, but we can kind of connect over that.
yeah.
So it's always nice when games consider that as an accommodation.
I think it's really cool. I think it's also really important to remember that when you make a game, you want your audience or your players to have a feeling. That is like the feeling. That is what you want to convey. And then take away things that will don't make like if it is a cozy game, make sure it's not frustrating to do like puzzles and stuff. If it is a frustrating game, make sure that it's the frustrating in the right way, where it's like, okay, this is frustrating because of difficulty, not because it's like clunky controllers. It's all of
It,
about honing in on the expectation of the gamer and make sure that they have the same understanding of what you want to convey to them. So taking away things like eating sounds is smart.
Agreed. Also on that note, quickly, I just wanted to give a shout out to Chicory, which is a game that had a misophonia mode. It was one of the first ones I was aware of. That game has a lot of like painting, sort of wet paint on paper effect sounds that they removed in a misophonia mode, and I'm glad that more people are following that trend.
That is really smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we got one last one on the roundup list, which is that Warner Brothers Games are hiring for an accessibility gameplay programmer to work on their upcoming Wonder Woman game. And that is a job listing that's out there now. If you are a gameplay programmer with accessibility experience and someone who can legally work in Canada,
Yes, yeah, you
that
need.
is important.
Yes, you need to be able to legally work in Canada, but you can do it remote work, which
Yeah.
is really, really good.
It's really good that we are starting to see more accessibility job roles being offered that specifically in their application say you can work full-time remote. So many job roles in accessibility used to not have that as an accommodation and used to be kind of like, no, you have to be in the office. And the number of disabled applicants that can't apply for accessibility job roles when you don't make them available remote
Yeah.
is pretty staggering.
And it's important to understand that accessibility is not just something that is in one place. It needs to be going through your whole company. And that is a work. It is a work in progress.
Hmm.
It's the same sort of we have seen like Xbox have done, where they have not only their games and studios like their vision about being accessible, but on their events, they also make sure that all their stands and stuff are accessible, so it's sort of something that needs to go through your whole company, but that comes with time. So it's nice to see we have a change now where people understand that us who have often most experience with accessibility also often need the possibility to do hybrid or remote. So yeah.
Exactly. Also, if you needed more convincing that this is a cool job role to go for, Mia Pavlin is working on this Wonder Woman game in an accessibility job role, and I believe she was responsible for being the accessibility lead on God of War Ragnarok. So I'm like, that's good accessibility company to be in, you
Yeah.
know. So if this might be a good fit for you and you are legally able to work in Canada, cool job opportunity. So yeah, that is everything for like the main news bit of this week, but we did have a couple of bits of roundup stuff to talk about. Did you want to lead us into that?
And it works actually quite well with what we talked about. Accessibility needs to be through everything because we were at GAconf, as you guys saw,
We
if you
were.
saw the 1.5 episode
We
last
did a
week.
thing together in person.
That was so
Hooray!
much fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
But due to like time restriction and me needing to catch a plane and stuff, we had to do it the morning of day 2. So we
Yeah,
didn't.
we'd originally wanted to do it at the end of day 2, but it just wasn't going to work out.
No. But we are going to just like quickly talk a bit about what we liked most from the day 2.
Yeah.
And I think that it was really, really nice. We had some panels. Wobbly Eyes did a
Yes.
panel. It's always nice to hear he speak and talked about his personal experience. I think that is important to understand that accessibility, it is about humans.
Yeah.
You have to connect it up to humans, and he did a really, really good work doing that one.
Yes, so this was the Wobbly Gamer. I'm just seeing if I've got the rest of the title. Yeah, the Wobbly Eyes from the Wobbly Gamer. Very good personal experience and applying that more broadly to industry trends. Well worth checking that talk out. For all these talks we mentioned, we will put links where possible down in the video description.
Yeah.
What else did we have on that day?
The really, 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 really cool thing was the thalassophobia from
Yes.
Horizon, and like
Mm,
seeing a dev on such a big game. And I always talk about when I talk about accessibility, it's not an either or thing. Accessibility,
mm,
you can do it so you have a barrier in your game. In this case, it is deep sea water and the fear of being in deep sea and water and underneath water. And that
yeah.
is a barrier, and you can decide either to ignore that, you can go over it, or you can remove it. And in this case, they have decided to not ignore it and not remove it because it was a vital part of their game. They want to have it in. Okay,
Mm.
how can we then go over it? And
Yeah.
it was a really, really good talk. I highly recommend if you work in the field to check that talk out in because it talks about the mindset of how, okay, we have a problem, how can we come to the end?
Indeed. Also, before that talk, I didn't know that thalassophobia, fear of deep water, was the fourth most common phobia that
Yeah.
exists, which was really neat. Again, we said this during the 1.5 episode about day one, but I really appreciated that they had a section of that talk that was breaking down the places where they maybe could have done better with their thalassophobia support and like the things they didn't account for and would do differently in future. Like that kind of acknowledgement is really important to have in an educational setting for other developers to learn from.
Yeah. And nothing is going to ever be perfect. This is talk about like working on doing better. It's like they told about 1% each day. And if you can just make something a bit more accessible, that is actually a long way because you will
Mm,
start a wheel rolling and inspire other people to do other things. We also did
yeah.
have a blind player survey. We're not going to go into it because it was like a lot of the numbers, but it was really, really cool to see. And it was also more the scholar, like academia view on it, which
Mm.
was really, really cool.
Yes, this was game accessibility preferences of blind players,
Yes.
and it was based on a 4 year long study that was taken by a university of blind people from Spain talking about like what their accessibility needs were around audio descriptions and video games and how those overlapped. And again, very numbers heavy. A lot of really useful insights in there that I would love to see explored further. It's well worth checking out if you're a numbers nerd.
Yes. And the project is called the RAD project,
Yeah.
RID. So if you want to check it out, and what I'm just crossing my finger for and hoping a lot about is that this will be funded again to be including the newer consoles because it came out in 2022, or like the end of the project was in 2022. The start of the
Yeah.
project was in 2019. So the next generation of consoles hasn't been included in this. And I would love to see a follow-up study to this one
Agreed.
with a new controller. So we have like a start and like we can see the change. That would be
Yeah.
amazing.
Exactly. One that I thought was really interesting from day two was notes on synthetic speech.
Yes, that is my next on my
Um,
list.
Yeah. So this was a talk that was all about like text to speech automated voices and the different styles of them that exist and what they're useful for and what they're not useful for and the pros and cons of them and how they're used in practice. Well worth checking out if you're not a screen reader user. If you've never heard the speed that like regular speed reader screen reader users listen to text being read, it is an eye-opening experience hearing text going at hundreds of words a minute very quickly at you.
And the presentationer had like a brilliant quote, which I'm going to say now because I wrote it down, and it's something I never thought about before. And she said, "Everything sound the same, and I'm bloody done with it." And
Yeah,
I have never thought about that before, but if you use a screen reader to read out the text in a game, every character, every item can
yeah,
sound the same. And
yes.
she took us through the history of everything of like sound synthetic speech and showed us differences, and I would recommend people go in and listen to the examples that was shown because they were really, really good, really, really big eye opener, and it made me sort of creative, thinking creative in like how can you use synthetic speech if you're going to use that in games, but still
Mm.
use two different sounds for different characters. Like there is a lot of creativity we can do there.
Yes. Also, just completely unimportant side note, but I really like this. I like that she acknowledged the currently very binary state of text to speech voices and acknowledged trans people's
Yeah.
existence when going, look, I recognize that text to speech talks in like man and woman, and that's the only terms. And I'm like, well done being aware of that and acknowledging it. Hell yeah.
Yeah, and the last thing I had on my list was Prince of Persia. Just
Yes.
again, like I'm a sucker for that game. It's just so cool
Mm.
to see somebody caring so much about accessibility. So if you want to deep dive into do a bit more the thought around how they did the accessibility there, go and check it out.
Yeah. So that's day two very quickly of GAconf summarized. There's apparently something special about the day we're posting this episode of Control Alt
Yes.
Access, isn't there? What's so special about today?
So if you're listening to this on the release day, it will be the 16th of May, which is GAAD. GAAD is Global Accessibility Awareness Day. It's a day that we have each year, and the purpose of GAAD is to get everybody talking, thinking, and learning about digital access and inclusion, and the more than 1 billion people with disabilities that lives around the globe. And I think that is really, really cool. I myself have planned on to this day when this podcast comes out to game Gears 5 with sightless combat. So I have never done a shooter before. And sightless combat is going to guide me through doing a shooter on stream. And of course, he is a gamer without sight. He has no vision at all. I am a gamer who play with my feet. So it's going to be gamer without sight versus gamer without hands. It's like the thumbnail we made for it. It's going to be really cool. And I can't wait to celebrate that day and showcase accessibility in that way.
That
really
sounds fantastic. I will be doing accessibility things on Global Accessibility Awareness Day, but they're things that I can't talk about publicly. But I'll be doing stuff. You know, I'll be working on accessibility. I'll be posting this show.
Yes.
I'll be doing stuff.
Yeah, we're going to do a hashtag GAAD when we post about this show.
be aware of accessibility. If you got to episode 2 of an accessibility focused show and you aren't aware of it yet, be aware of accessibility today.
Yes, especially today. Every day, yes, but especially today. But we talked a bit about the giveaway. Laura, do you want to tell the people?
Sure. Yeah, so we talked last week about the fact that there was the Overjoyed controller app that existed that was a way of customizing a bunch of inputs on, say, a touchscreen or via a mouse or a gaze tracker or stuff like that as a way of doing accessible inputs that does work on console, but you would need a device, particularly on Nintendo Switch, if you wanted to use the Overjoyed controller app. You would need the 8-bit do microcontroller as a sort of middle connector to get to your Switch. And we talked about this last week, and we've been chatting to the folks at Overjoyed, and we are able to give away 2 8-bit do microcontrollers this week to people who would either just generally find them accessible or would find them useful as a way to be able to use the Overjoyed app. We've got some controllers to give away.
Yes!
So, if you would like a chance of winning one of 2 8-bit do microcontrollers, you can email controlaltaccesspodcast@gmail.com and answer this week's question, which is, what's your favorite accessible video game?
Yes.
To be entered into a random draw, we will be drawing results on May 21st at noon UK, so at 12 p.m. UK. We'll be doing a random draw of people who have emailed us going like, hey, I would like that controller, here's my favorite accessible video game. And we will send you instructions on how to redeem your free controller.
Yeah. It's really, really cool. I hope people will enter the giveaway, and thank you so much, Anthony, behind Overjoyed, to giving us this possibility and giving us this opportunity, and in general just like making this, which is just really, really cool.
Yeah, for transparency, they've also allowed each of us to get one of these controllers for ourselves, and I'm looking forward to having the opportunity to play around a bit more with the Overjoyed controller. As a result of this, I can use the Overjoyed app because they're helping us access those 8-bit do microcontrollers.
And also, if you cannot for some reason send us a mail, you can also comment on our YouTube with the same answer, the same question, and you can be pulled out at random to win this amazing controller. So either send us a mail or comment down below, and we will have announced the winner next episode.
Indeed. But we also have a question from last week to read out people's responses to. Because last week, or last episode on the show, we asked everyone, what is your first memory of having a video game be accessible to you in some way? And we have some answers to read. Do you want to go for the first one?
Yeah, and this is so much fun because like I just think, as I said last time, getting you all, everyone on board with this is so important because it needs to be more than just a Revy and Laura show, even though it is
Yeah.
a Revy and Laura show, but we need your voices to be heard because accessibility is plateau different things. So the first comment I saw was Jog Proof on YouTube saying, I can't remember my first accessible experience, but the one that impacted me the most, bar subtitles on my HOH self, would be auto completing QuickTime events because it's always taking me a little longer to register what to do. For my mother, though, it's Power Wash Sim tripod mode where the camera stays put and the controller just washes away. It lets her play so much. I bought her an Xbox so she could play it in the living room rather than hog my computer for hours.
I love hearing stories about like people's parents getting into video games because of things. My mum loves playing VR games. She got very into VR games when I started like playing around with those. She really enjoys being able to just look around and use hands and play the video game. And I'm always like, yes, anything that gets people's mums playing video games is wonderful to hear about.
It is. And it is just like um talked about like being hard of hearing and getting the subtitles. It's
Yeah.
just that uh just being recognized by the game. But like the
Yeah.
experience of being recognized, I talked last time about my experience with being recognized in Prince of Persia. It's just something about it. It's just a magical
Yeah.
feeling of feeling like the
I
norm.
I wasn't an afterthought. Someone acknowledged I exist here, and that's
Yes.
great.
Yes.
We also have Koravax on YouTube who says, first accessibility feature was in Quake 3, and I came across it completely by accident and without clear understanding. Via CFG tweaks, the game lets you pick-mip textures almost completely out of the game, resulting in smooth, shaded level architecture, which seriously cuts down on visual noise on screen. It's done by competitive players, but it also helped me who was otherwise quickly overwhelmed by the visual cacophony on top of the frantic gameplay.
That's
Reduced visual input, heck yeah!
Yeah, that is so cool. It's just so cool. We need things like this. Yeah, this is why it's so important to have differences.
Mm.
Again,
It,
differences.
it reminds me of why I like high contrast mode in games a lot. I sometimes just find it easier to go strip out a lot of the detail that I don't need to be taking in, and just let me go, that's me, that's an enemy, that's where I'm going, cool, cool, just reduce that input a little for me.
Yeah,
Um,
it's also I
yeah,
find can help you with puzzles if you're stuck. I had to use it a lot
yeah,
in God of War because I didn't understand what the game wanted me to do next. So I just
yeah.
put on high contrast mode and then it just bright yellow the next like thing I could interact with.
Yep.
There you go.
Yep, same for not missing all the pickups in The Last of Us. Is just highlight them yellow so I don't miss the very important ammo I'm supposed to be finding.
Yes.
And we got one last one. Do you want to do the last one?
Yeah, I'll serve on YouTube says the Steam controller. I got one day I got one day one because I liked gamepads and tinkering. Very quickly, someone posted a video of them playing Skyrim with one hand. I was fascinated and tried it myself with different games and gamepads. Helped other people figuring this out. After a few years, I started having pain in my right thumb, so it was only then that I moved into the realm of accessibility.
I'm so glad that weird controllers exist sometimes. I'm
Yes,
so glad companies come up with controllers where it's like, no one's made one like this before, maybe it's good. Things
let's
like the Steam controller are just so good for like, well, maybe this is good for you.
yeah, let's try. Let's try. And I
I
like
I
that.
Yeah, I love the Steam controller. I wish it was still a thing that people could get access to. It's great for I want to play a game that's a PC-based game that requires a mouse, but I find it like painful or uncomfortable to use a mouse at a
Yeah.
PC. I want to use a controller. It's such a good replacement for a mouse in a controller form. Why is it not still a thing?
It's cool, and I wish the barriers of getting into making things like accessible controllers and different ways of doing it wasn't so high, so that
Yeah.
people could just like try. And tinkering is just fun.
Agreed. So I think that's everything for this episode. We're not doing a general question for next week because we've got the one for the giveaway of, so that's going to be our question for next week. So I think that's everything. Arevya, where can people find you on the internet?
Oh my god, you can find me everywhere under the name Arevya, except for TikTok because somebody stole my name, and there I am, Arevya Gaming. And Laura, where can everybody find you?
Everyone can find me at Laura K Buzz pretty much everywhere on the internet. I've got that good unified branding. That video about Hades 2 will be up in all of its getting real deep in the weeds about spoilers territory the day after this goes up.
Yeah, and my Botany Manor review will come up either right after this episode or before the next episode.
Yep, and I think the only other thing I've got coming up is the week between episodes. I should have my Pine Hearts review up, so there won't be a Control Alt Access next week because we're twice a month, but there should be a Pine Hearts review from me next week.
Yes.
Thank you everyone for watching. We hope you've enjoyed.
Bye.